Welcome to California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We are in Sacramento today. We are joined by Cristina Garcia. She is the Assistant Majority Leader in the California State Assembly. And you recently took an official trip to Mexico with the governor and others. Talk to us about that trip. It's a few months back, but give us a sense of what happened there.
Yeah, it was a delegation of legislators and members who have interest in the area of energy, climate change, and education. We traveled with individuals from the UCs and the Cal States. And we were there to sign a number of understandings contracts with the Mexican government, including a student exchange program, ways to work together to share some technology and intellectual capital on global warming and climate change.
There was a lot of excitement out of that trip, including from you. But sadly, you mentioned students. We know that in the intervening months, one of the biggest tragedies to befall that nation occurred, and that was the massacre of 43 college students in Iguala. For our viewers that may forget what happened a few months ago, give us a sense of what happened in that town.
We have 43 students who were in a teacher's college out there, and they went missing. And as information started to come and unravel, now it's being told that it was an order from the governor because his wife was going to give a speech the next day, and they no longer wanted the protest to continue in the center of town.
Right. Was it the mayor or the governor? I'm trying to remember. It was one of the leaders.
It was one of the leaders, and so the order was then given. The police officers picked them up and handed them over to the cartel. The cartel then tortured them and incinerated their bodies and disposed of them. They're still piecing all this together, and it hasn't been confirmed. But the details of what the cartel members that have been picked up have been true and have been accurate. Some of those bodies have been identified.
Right, I've heard that.
And so since then, there's been a lot of unrest and protest and an outcry in the international community, but specifically back home in Mexico.
In some ways, though, it could be argued it's inspiring that we are hearing hues and cries from this because, recently there was a massacre in Nigeria, and there wasn't a lot of talk about it when 2,000 individuals had been slaughtered, but now the Iguala Massacre really, it hit a nerve. It hit a nerve.
For me, it did in particular. No, I think for me it hit in particular because I was in Mexico signing an MOU, showing the Mexican people that, hey, you should believe in your governor and your president, that this country's moving forward. Your basic civil rights are getting protected. And we as Californians are going to be partners here. And so because I was an integral part of that process, I was there for signatures, I got to speak at these events, I felt that it was my responsibility to say, well, I'm not going to be a part of this as far as, for me, I just kind of feel like your basic principles should ensure public safety and security of your citizens in your country.
Because in your view, and the view of many, if I may say, the government, both federal, state, and local in Mexico, has not been effective in trying to uncover the facts behind this massacre.
In my view, I feel that instead of being effective, they refuse to even discuss the issue. They don't want this to be an issue on their agenda, and instead they're talking about how these protesters or these groups or individuals like myself are just trying to destabilize their government. And so for me, I just felt it was really important that since I was there, my name was used, my images were used, I had to take a stand. I mean, I hope my peers, whether or not they were there, joined me. And I have since introduced a House resolution asking that we suspend those MOUs and that we suspend trade with Mexico, even though they are such a giant partner. But I feel, I could sit here and wait for the president to take action, or we could think about what can we do to push that, because there's nothing like an economic driver to get electeds to do their job.
That is a huge development. For you to make that statement, for you to introduce that resolution, I mean, that's putting yourself on the line politically. That's really saying you are not happy and you want action immediately and now.
Call it my naive, because I've never, I'm pretty new to this job. I've only been here for 2 years. But I always told myself that I was going to learn and grow and learn how to navigate the system, but I was never going to lose myself. And this is something that's really important for me, for my principles and my basic beliefs. And I think about how special and unique my job is. I am one of 121 people in California, the 7th biggest economy in the world. And they say how California goes the world. And I feel I have a special platform and a special power that I could use to bring a voice to the situation, and I'm going to use it.
Weren't you a teacher or a professor?
I taught math for 13 years. I started at the high school level, and I moved on to the college level. And I've been an activist. I haven't always agreed with my government, but I've had the liberty and the luxury of living in the United States where I can say what I want to say and never feel like there's going to be repercussions or worse, my safety is in danger.
So I have to think that the Iguala Massacre, while it touched us all, particularly touched you. I mean, you're a teacher. I believe you're of Mexican descent. Yeah, you're a Spanish speaker. So I mean, there are a lot of connections there.
No, definitely. I mean, as a teacher, first of all, I just felt, you know, I couldn't believe it's like these are folks trying to become teachers. And I think about, I've been in academia, and our school socializes with certain principles, and they're not all the same. And that someone says that that's not okay, it's a problem. I had come from immigrant parents from Mexico. My dad comes from the state of Michoacan that it has had actually issues with the autodefensores, with the cartel, where local communities now are trying to take over their cities and push out the cartel. And I was trying to be positive and say maybe it's going to be different this time. Maybe this president is going to give us the reforms he's saying he's going to give us, but he refuses to put this on his agenda.
Could one argue, though, that engagement would be more effective? Keeping those MOUs going as a way to continue the conversation would effectuate more change as opposed to canceling them?
No, I think as long as this president refuses to acknowledge he has a problem and put this as one of his top priorities, the Mexican president, then engagement doesn't make any sense. I am just then rewarding his bad behavior. If he was willing to acknowledge that we had a problem that we need to address, and let's sit down and talk about how can we help you do reforms, then I think it merits that we continue, you know, with these MOUs. But as long as he's saying we don't have a problem, there's just individuals are going rogue or trying to destabilize this country, then I feel why should we engage with an individual that's not willing to engage with the problem in front of him? So
what happens next? The resolution, H.R. 5, on the floor. How does this work? I guess it's not legislation per se. So
no, this is, you know, I've taken a statement and I'm asking the 79 other assembly members in my house to take a statement and to send that statement to the governor and put it on his desk so that he knows that we have a collective voice.
But could you file legislation to revoke the MOUs? Is that something theoretically?
That would be there. We've done it in the past with other countries where we've, for example, the UCs, they've asked to do this investment in with certain countries, right?
I see.
So there's definitely possibilities. And the next step for me, I decided this has been the third piece of action I've taken. I started with an editorial when the 43 student massacre came out. I did a second editorial when the president of Mexico was visiting our president of the United States, and now this action. And so I think for me, I keep thinking about, well, how do I make sure this stays out there? And do I have to escalate my efforts? And if I do, I will definitely move that way. But in the immediate, I actually need the people watching this to call in to our Assembly Rules chairperson and say, we want to make sure that this House resolution is heard and it gets to the floor, because that's a hurdle I need to make sure it gets to the floor right now.
So it would have to go into a committee first.
Yes.
And that committee is Assembly Rules.
Yes.
Which is chaired by the Speaker?
No, it's chaired by Assembly Member Rich Gordon.
Okay, and so...
And then it's there's a committee, there's a vote, and I would need to get 50% plus one of the committee members who agree that this resolution should come to the floor. And then I would need to convince at least half of my peers to vote yes on this resolution to get it to the governor's desk. And what this becomes is not a law, but a statement telling the governor, we really want this to be a priority for you. What are we going to do next?
So I presume you're whipping, I guess you could say. You're politicking on this. What are you hearing? What are people saying? It's got to be a tricky one because...
You know, it's tricky because we are elected officials, right? And we are calling out another elected officials. We navigate that constant of like different priorities pushing at us, and we prioritize in different orders. And we are human beings, and we can't control everything. One individual can't control everything. And the reform that I'm asking for from, you know, the government in Mexico is massive, and it's a big culture I'm asking to change. And so I think you're really putting yourself out there saying, as an elected, why I'm doing it is because I get it. I get how hard it is. But I also get how important this is, you know. And so it's kind of hard. You start calling your own self out, and it's like, well, what have I done that's wrong, right? Are you being hypocritical here? What can people call out on you? And I've always told individuals, hey, I'm a human being. I'm not perfect. If I'm doing it wrong, be my partner. Pick up the phone. No, don't just tell me how I'm wrong, but tell me how we're going to fix it.
Her name is Cristina Garcia. She is the Assistant Majority Leader in the California State Assembly. My name is Brad Pomerance, and this is California Edition.